Come here quickly. What is it, father-in-law? Quiet. When I returned home late at night due to an urgent call from work, I was trying to quietly make my way back to my bedroom on the second floor, being careful not to wake anyone. Suddenly, my father-in-law pulled me into the attic. Looking at him with confusion written all over my face, he said, "Listen carefully to the sounds from below." Though bewildered, I did as he asked and focused on what was happening downstairs. That's when I heard strange noises I'd never heard before. "What's that sound?" After noticing the noise, I found a gap where I could peek below, and what I saw was equally disturbing. What on earth? As I trembled in fear at the sight, my father-in-law whispered to me, making sure the woman downstairs couldn't hear, "Run away, quickly." I decided to trust his judgment. I'm Aisha, a 38-year-old systems programmer. "Hey, Weston, what time do you think you'll finish work today?" "Well, things are pretty quiet at work right now, so I should be able to leave on time." "Oh, that's wonderful, we'll all be able to have dinner together." "Well then, father, we're off to work." "Take care, both of you." Weston is my husband, we got married 2 years ago. Currently, I live with my husband and father-in-law in their family home. Weston and I don't have any children. It's not that I dislike or don't want children, it's because of a car accident I had when I was younger. It's been a while since I've gone out with Mom and Aisha. Yes, it really has. I hope we can keep doing things like this. About 10 years ago, I was enjoying a drive with my parents, with my father at the wheel. As long as we stayed healthy, I thought we'd always be able to go on outings like this. But tragedy struck without warning. Watch out. Suddenly, a car ran a red light and crashed head-on into our vehicle. The impact caused our car to flip over, and I lost consciousness. Someone must have witnessed the accident and called an ambulance. When I came to, I was lying in a hospital bed. I called for the doctor and nurses to ask about my parents' condition, and they told me, "I'm very sorry, but your parents didn't survive. And while you made it through, well..." What? Is something wrong? The doctor, though clearly uncomfortable, informed me about my parents' passing and my condition. "Your uterus was damaged in the accident." What does that mean? Are you saying I won't be able to have children? It's not impossible, but it will be very difficult to conceive. Oh no. So not only did I lose my parents in the accident, but I was also left with fertility problems. I lost both my parents and my dream of becoming a mother. The reality of it all was devastating. I felt completely lost and even considered joining my parents in death. But while going through their belongings, I found photos of their smiling faces and precious mementos. I realized that if I went to join them now, it would only make them sad, so I found the strength to stay. This couldn't be the end, I still had my work. Because of my fertility issues, I had given up on romance and instead threw myself into my work as a systems programmer. Before I knew it, I was approaching 40. Then came the turning point in my life 3 years ago, when I was 35. I'm Weston. Pleased to meet you. Likewise. This was how I first met my husband. My first impression was that he was dedicated and sincere about his work. As someone who was also devoted to her career, I found Weston's professional demeanor very attractive. Perhaps he felt the same way about me. We had built a good working relationship, but one day Weston surprised me with an unexpected question. "Would you like to have dinner with me sometime?" Oh. Weston, excuse me, but are you married? Weston was 2 years older than me, making him 37 at the time. It wouldn't have been strange if he were married. When I asked to make sure, he replied, "Well, this is embarrassing, but I'm actually divorced. My ex-wife and I split up because of my infertility issues, so I'm single now." Oh, I see. I felt bad for making him say something so personal, but hearing this helped me take that first step forward. If that was the case, then even if I couldn't have children because of my condition, I wouldn't have to worry about being blamed for it. The reason I had given up on romance after becoming infertile was that I feared being emotionally attacked by men who wanted children. But if Weston had similar struggles, I felt we could share and support each other through them. "All right then, I'd love to have dinner with you." And so I accepted Weston's dinner invitation. Our conversations outside of work were interesting too, and I started thinking that I could have a happy future with this person. As we spent time together, we naturally grew closer, and after Weston confessed his feelings, we started dating. Then, a year later, when I was 36, "Aisha, I love you. Even though we can't have children, will you marry me?" Looking straight into my eyes, Weston proposed. My heart was already made up. Actually, I became infertile after an accident years ago. So it's okay if we don't have children as long as I have you. Most people probably want children after getting married. From that perspective, infertility could be a major obstacle to marriage. But we had shared our vulnerabilities with each other and were both genuinely okay with a life without children when we got married. I thought this would be the beginning of my happy new life, but I wish Mom could have seen how happy I am being married to you. I wish my parents could have seen this too. My husband and I had this conversation at our wedding. My mother-in-law, Weston's mother, had passed away 2 years before the wedding. My husband had told me several times about how much his mother had doted on me. I sometimes wondered if he might be a bit of a mama's boy, but I care deeply about my own parents too. I told myself this and tried not to overthink it. After getting married, I lived with my husband and father-in-law in their family home. Living together was my husband's wish. "Listen, Aisha. If I move out, Dad will be all alone. He's getting on in years, and I'm worried about him. I know it's asking a lot, but would you be willing to live with him? Live together?" "Yes, that's fine." To be honest, I had some reservations about living with my in-laws. I had imagined living peacefully, just the two of us. However, since my own parents had passed away, I could no longer do anything for them. So I could understand my husband's desire to do something for his father, which is why I accepted his request. Besides respecting my husband's feelings about his father, there was another reason. Since my husband was sincere and kind, I thought his father would probably have a similar personality. If that were the case, we should be able to get along well living together. Looking back, being so optimistic was my first mistake. What's wrong? I can't seem to sleep well. I suppose some people have trouble sleeping when they're in an unfamiliar environment, even if they can sleep fine in their own bedroom. However, I never had trouble sleeping before, whether staying at my grandparents' house or in hotel rooms while traveling. But for some reason, I always felt uneasy trying to sleep at my in-laws' house. It wasn't simply because I was using a different bed or pillow. My relationship with my father-in-law probably had something to do with it. I felt that my father-in-law was keeping his distance from me. I could sense it, but I didn't understand why. "Excuse me, father-in-law, do you have a moment?" "Sorry, I'm busy right now. Can we talk later?" "I see." Whenever I tried to talk to him, he would either avoid me by saying he was busy or end the conversation with non-committal responses, It seemed like he was trying to avoid any interaction with me. I wonder if I did something wrong? I thought there must be a reason for my father-in-law's attitude, but I couldn't think of anything I might have done. I thought my husband might know something, but around our first anniversary, even his attitude toward me had become cold. Hey, Weston, was your father always this quiet? Does he have trouble interacting with people? Huh? Why are you asking about that? Well, it feels like he's avoiding me, like there's this distance. How should I know? Maybe you did something wrong? Stop bothering me with this nonsense. What's with that attitude? What's gotten into you? Gone was my kind husband from before our marriage, replaced by someone who treated me harshly with rough words. My husband's changes would continue to worsen, and I would soon learn that my father-in-law had a valid reason for keeping his distance, but that revelation would come a bit later. My husband's strange behavior wasn't limited to his harsh words. He would throw away my belongings whenever he decided they were unnecessary, including things that were precious to me. Hey, Weston, have you seen the stuffed animal I got from my parents? It's very important to me. Oh, that dirty old thing? I threw it out ages ago. You're too old for stuffed animals anyway. What? That stuffed animal was a precious gift from my parents. My husband's behavior became increasingly controlling. At this point, I realized I needed to keep my important possessions where he couldn't find them. While I was organizing my things, Aisha, do you have a moment? Is this stuffed animal yours? Oh, yes, it is. Thank goodness you found it. Yes, I saw Weston taking it somewhere. I see, thank you so much. You really helped me out. Thanks to my father-in-law, my precious stuffed animal made it back to me. Father-in-law is actually kind, I thought. I never expected him to retrieve it for me. His attitude toward me must have had some reason behind it, I was certain of that now. I thought we might finally be able to build a good relationship. Just when I was starting to feel this way, events took another dramatic turn. Father-in-law, are you all right? Please hang in there. One day, my father-in-law suddenly fell ill. His complexion was terrible, so I took him to the hospital. After the examination, they couldn't immediately identify what was wrong, so they admitted him for observation. I reported this to my husband. However, my husband showed no concern for his father and made an unbelievable statement. If they find something wrong, the doctors will treat it. It's none of my business. How can you say that? Wasn't your concern for your father the whole reason we moved in together? My husband's words completely contradicted what he had said when we first got married. Was this person always so cold-hearted? Where had my kind husband gone? I was shocked by how much he had changed, but this would turn out to be relatively minor compared to what was to come. This realization came just a few days later. While I was out shopping, I spotted my husband in town. As I hesitated about whether to call out to him, I noticed he was walking with a woman, arm in arm, chatting like lovers. While their behavior suggested they were a couple, something felt off. It was the woman's age. Since this was my first time seeing her, I couldn't be sure, but she appeared significantly older than my husband. Could she be a relative I didn't know about, or was he having an affair? Either way, Weston's behavior was suspicious. This uncertainty would just keep bothering me. Rather than just wondering, I wanted to know the truth. So I decided to hire a private investigator. With my father-in-law's condition and my husband's behavior, my concerns kept mounting, and I found myself unable to relax. During this time, the hospital called to say they had my father-in-law's test results, so I rushed there to hear what the doctor had to say. Please listen calmly. Your father-in-law has terminal cancer, with about 2 years to live. No. While I was shocked by the doctor's pronouncement, my father-in-law seemed strangely calm. Perhaps he had already known something was wrong with his body. He seemed that composed about it. Soon after getting my father-in-law's test results, the private investigator contacted me with their findings. To get straight to the point, your husband is having an affair. Oh no. So my husband was indeed having an affair. I steeled myself to accept the reality and looked at the photos provided, but wait, this was different from the woman I had seen. The woman I saw was elderly, but the woman in these photos was young. They had to be different people, given the age difference. Was my husband having affairs with multiple women? Either way, he had betrayed me. Such betrayal was unforgivable. Honestly, I wanted to divorce him, but my father-in-law was battling terminal cancer. If I divorced now, wouldn't he have to face his illness and loneliness alone? Considering this possibility, I decided to prioritize my father-in-law and put the divorce on hold. Father-in-law, how are you feeling? I'm having a relatively good day today. I'm sorry for causing you so much worry. No, please don't worry about that. Observing my father-in-law's condition, it seemed he didn't need nursing care yet. However, given his terminal diagnosis, his condition could worsen at any time. With this in mind, I wanted to spend as much time with him as possible. My husband remained obsessed with his mistress. Whether through the private investigator's findings or my own observations, evidence of his affairs kept mounting, and I grew increasingly disgusted. I certainly can't trust Weston with father-in-law's care anymore. Having completely lost faith in my husband, I took care of my father-in-law alone while my husband was off with his mistress. But then, several weeks later, there was an emergency at work. My boss called, saying they needed me to come in for urgent troubleshooting. Though I worried about my father-in-law, my boss seemed desperate, so it must have been serious. Thinking this, I rushed to the office. When I arrived, I saw my boss and colleagues frantically working, so I checked in with my boss for instructions and joined in. While the problem was more challenging than expected, we all worked together and managed to resolve it, allowing me to head home. It had gotten quite late. By the time I finished work and got home, it was the middle of the night, so I quietly unlocked the door and entered, trying not to wake my father-in-law. Just as I was about to open my bedroom door on the second floor, Aisha, come here. What is it, father-in-law? Quiet. I was surprised not only that my father-in-law was still awake, but also by where he took me. He pulled me into the attic, which we were using as a storage room, and closed the door. Father-in-law, what's going on? Listen carefully to the sounds from below. Though confused, I did as he said and focused on what was happening downstairs. Sure enough, I heard strange noises I'd never heard before. What's that sound? After noticing the noise, I found a gap where I could look down, and what I saw was disturbing. A woman who appeared to be my husband's mistress was walking down the hallway with a crazed look in her eyes. Aisha, where are you? I won't forgive any woman who seduces Weston. What? She's looking for me? The mistress's target wasn't my husband, it was me. I could clearly hear her vengeful words. Could my life be in danger? Judging by the mistress's behavior, it certainly seemed so. I held my breath, paralyzed with fear. What should I do? As I stood frozen with a mixture of fear and confusion, my father-in-law spoke to me. You can't stay here. Run away, that woman could appear at any moment. But what about you? Don't worry about me. Just focus on staying away from Weston until the divorce is finalized. I understand. Right now, my father-in-law was desperately trying to protect me. To honor his efforts, I realized I needed to prioritize my own safety. I couldn't rush out and risk running into the mistress. As I watched her, she muttered, "I'll find you someday, Aisha." With those parting words, the mistress left. She's gone now. Aisha, take this letter. You need to leave the house right away. Yes, I understand. With that, I received a letter from my father-in-law and fled the house. Afterward, I filed for divorce through a lawyer I had arranged beforehand and demanded compensation from my husband for his infidelity. The private investigator's findings revealed that my husband had been having affairs during work hours. When I informed his company about this, he was fired. When we met to discuss the settlement after the divorce was finalized, my ex-husband said, "I don't care about divorcing you, I'll be with Ulrika anyway. Besides, I'm about to come into a lot of money, so I can afford to pay you compensation." He maintained this bravado while paying the settlement in full. For some reason, his mistress was there too, saying, "You're such a fool to let go of Weston," with a triumphant smile. Still, she definitely looked older than in the photos. This woman thought she had one, but I wasn't even competing with her. I really couldn't care less about what she had to say. I was more bothered by the discrepancy between her appearance in the photos and in person. 2 years later, my father-in-law passed away after his battle with cancer. I attended the funeral, where I heard, "Finally, this day has come. Made us wait so long. Is that really Weston?" What an inappropriate thing to say at his father's funeral. His appearance had deteriorated compared to 2 years ago, he looked like a completely different person. I paid Aisha the settlement because I thought I'd get the money right away. Made us wait 2 whole years. Stupid old man. Hey, Weston, that's enough. Do you even realize what you're saying? Naturally, my ex-husband's relatives were also at the funeral, and they stepped in to stop his stream of offensive comments. "Oh, it's fine. Weston's been through so much, after all." What? Why are you? The person who appeared was Weston's mistress Ulrika, but when they saw her, my ex-husband's relatives were absolutely stunned. You seemed surprised to see Ulrika. Is something wrong with her? When I asked my ex-husband's relatives about this, they explained with slightly pale faces. So she's called Ulrika? I thought she was Eleanor. Eleanor? Weston's mother. Haven't you met her? She had already passed away when I married Weston. The relative's explanation helped me understand why the mistress had looked so aged. Well, Ulrika's story didn't matter anymore. I figured my ex-husband would soon start making a fuss about his true objective. Sure enough. Enough with all this meaningless talk and funeral stuff, hand over the inheritance already. The big money Weston had mentioned was his father's inheritance. He was acting strangely, thinking he would finally get his hands on it. At this point, I decided to reveal the reality that Weston didn't know. "I'm sorry, but things won't go the way you want. Your father left a will." "A will?" "Yes. I was legally adopted by your father. I'm the one who will receive the inheritance." What? Don't be ridiculous. I had expected complaints when I revealed this fact, and sure enough, there they were. But someone who had acted so selfishly had no right to complain in the first place. Who's being ridiculous? You neglected your father and had affairs. Don't act so entitled. When I glared at my ex-husband and snapped at him, he couldn't say anything more and just bit his lip in frustration, finally quieting down. The only one left to comfort him was his mistress. It's okay, Weston. I'll take care of you. She clung to him as she said this. Could it be? That's when I remembered the letter my father-in-law had left me. What was written in that letter was hard to believe. I have spiritual sensitivity. Weston's mistress Ulrika is possessed by my late wife, Eleanor. When I first read the letter, I couldn't believe it, but the way the mistress was embracing my ex-husband now and her behavior were exactly like his mother. That would also explain the discrepancy between her photos and actual appearance. The photos only captured physical reality, so the ghost wouldn't appear, only the young woman was visible. That must be what happened. However, people like me, my father-in-law, and my ex-husband's relatives could see Eleanor overlapping with the mistress's appearance. That's why she appeared older to us. My father-in-law had also explained about my ex-husband's first divorce. Weston's first divorce was Eleanor's fault. Eleanor was obsessed with Weston and had tormented his first wife. That's what caused the divorce. I had heard that his mother had doted on him, but I never imagined it went this far. I was completely shocked by all of this. Even after death, she remained obsessed with him and possessed his mistress. Weston, you've done nothing wrong. It's all this woman's fault. What on earth is she saying? Perhaps the mistress was particularly susceptible to possession. Her eeriness sent chills down my spine. Maybe this was the result of her bad behavior. Seeing someone whose consciousness seemed to have merged with Eleanor's, I couldn't help but think that way. Though the mistress before me was clearly possessed by Eleanor, this wasn't the first time it had happened. My father-in-law's letter also mentioned the night I fled. It wasn't the mistress who appeared then, but Eleanor. Apparently, she had grown impatient that I hadn't yet divorced her son and planned to eliminate me. How pitiful that the mistress had become so thoroughly possessed by Eleanor. Thinking about it that way, I even felt sorry for her. However, my father-in-law had noticed that the mistress had approached my ex-husband for money, and he wrote that she doesn't deserve any sympathy. 5 years have passed since then. When I visited my father-in-law's grave on the anniversary of his death, I met some of my ex-husband's relatives and naturally got to talking about my ex-husband. At the funeral, his mistress acted like she was possessed by Eleanor and said she'd take care of Weston, but it turns out she didn't have any money herself. Really? So where are they living now? They're both homeless. Given their state 5 years ago, neither of them was in their right mind. I suppose becoming homeless was a natural progression. You might think they would regret their current situation, but apparently not. He doesn't even seem aware that he's living in poverty. He laughs loudly as if he's living in a mansion. Is he all right? Of course not. If we had left him alone, he would have caused trouble for many people. We couldn't let that happen, so other relatives and I worked together to have him committed to a mental hospital. There was no other choice. I see. That must have been very difficult for all of you. I wonder how much the relatives struggled before getting my ex-husband admitted to the mental hospital. It surely wasn't easy. Apparently, as soon as he was admitted, he suddenly went completely insane. The same thing happened to his mistress, and she too was sent to a mental hospital. I doubt they'll ever return to normal now. While I feel for the doctors and nurses who have to deal with them, I hope this at least reduces the harm they can cause to others. As a side note, In the letter my father-in-law left me, he wrote that my parents had been protecting me. Considering how I survived that traffic accident years ago, it's entirely possible. However, if my father-in-law hadn't helped me escape that night, I might not be here now. Thinking about it that way, I'm sure my father-in-law is watching over me too. Though he never mentioned this in his letter, I'm certain of it. To put at ease all those watching over me from heaven, I want to live a happy life from now on.